I caught the bleed through at 0340, on a board that hadn't shown anything but static and weather noise in 6 years. The listening post sat on a cold rock we called Anchor Station. 3 relay dishes pointed at a stretch of dead sky nobody else wanted, and my job most nights was to log silence. That night, the silence had a shape in it. It wasn't aimed at us. I knew that before I'd finished cleaning up the waveform. The carrier frequency was old, narrowband, the kind of signal you'd use if your transmitter had been built before anyone thought Earth was worth a channel. It was sidelobe bleed, the faint skirt of a beam pointed somewhere else entirely, catching our dish on its way past, like a held door brushing your shoulder. I ran it through the translator twice, because I didn't believe the first pass. Both times it came back the same, a distress call, repeating, addressed to a fleet registry that didn't match anything in our archive, requesting escort and medical capacity, coordinates included. I wasn't supposed to do anything with bleed. Protocol said log it, flag it, pass it up the chain in the morning report, and let someone with more rank than me decide in daylight whether it mattered. I'd sat that post for 4 years, and never once seen the bleed protocol invoked for anything but ship's business, and the occasional misfired beacon from a long-haul freighter. This wasn't that. The repeat interval was too clean, too deliberate, the kind of pacing you build into a signal when you intend for it to outlast you. Somebody had built that loop to keep transmitting, long after whoever sent it had stopped expecting an answer. But the coordinates put the source 11 hours out at flank speed for anything we had nearby. And anything we had nearby turned out to be one ship, the Corvette Cormorant Reach, on a slow patrol loop, captained by a woman named Reyes Okafor, who'd answered my hail on the second ring, like she'd been waiting for an excuse. "Say again the addressee," she said, when I read her the registry string. "Not us," I said. "It's not addressed to us. It's bleed off a beam, meant for something called the Outer Concord. I don't know what that is. I don't think they know we exist." There was a pause on the line that I'd come to recognize over the years as a captain doing math. Civilian distress, repeating, 11 hours out, she said. "Coordinates solid?" "Solid. Then it doesn't matter who they meant it for." She filed the deviation herself, before anyone above her could tell her not to, and the Cormorant Reach burned hard for 11 hours toward a signal that had never once been pointed at Earth. I stayed on the board the whole time, because once you've heard something like that, you can't put it down. I picked up the actual beam an hour after she launched, stronger now, closer to its intended line, and underneath the distress loop there was a second voice, weaker, human translated only because our system had apparently cracked this dialect decades ago and never told anyone it mattered. A woman's voice, clipped and exhausted, giving head counts. 300 and some odd souls, she said. A convoy of refugee transports running from something she only called the dust behind us, engines failing one at a time, no escort, praying their old emergency channel still reached anyone in the Concorde who remembered they existed. They weren't praying it reached us. They didn't know we were a thing that could hear them. Okafor arrived at hour 10 and 40, not 11. She'd shaved the margin somewhere I never asked about, and found 4 transports strung out across 40 kilometers of dark, 2 of them venting atmosphere, 1 already silent. She put the Cormorant Reach's hull between the lead transport and the debris field that had been chewing at their formation, ran a tether line to the worst of them, and got her own engineer crawling through someone else's reactor compartment with a toolkit built for a different century of machine entirely. The engineer's name was Dahl, and he told me later, over a beer I bought him for it, that he'd had no business getting that reactor stable. The coolant geometry wasn't anything he'd trained on. The control runes weren't in any language his suit's translator carried a dictionary for. And he'd done it anyway, by treating it the way he'd treat any reactor he'd ever cracked open. Find the thing that's screaming loudest, quiet that thing first, worry about understanding it later. I have the recording of what the refugee captain said when she finally got a clear channel to Okafor's bridge. Her name was Sen Variel, captain of the lead transport, and she said it the way you'd report a malfunction, flat, because she didn't have anything left for surprise. "You are not Concord," she said. "No," Okafor said. "This frequency does not reach you. It has never reached you. We checked. Before we ever used it, there was nothing on it. There was tonight." Varela didn't answer that for a long moment. On the recording you can hear engine noise behind her, and somebody coughing, and a child's voice asking a question nobody answers. "We did not send this to be heard by you," she said finally. "We sent it to be heard by anyone who remembered we were owed an answer. You are not owed anything." "Wasn't keeping score," Okafor said. "Where's the dust behind you?" 4 hours, maybe 5. "Then we've got work." She didn't have the tonnage for 300 people, and she said so, plainly, over the open channel. No softening it. 1 Corvette, 1 med bay built for 30, 1 engineer, 1 tether line. What she had was time, and she spent every hour of it the way you'd spend money you didn't expect to keep. Getting the dying transport's reactor stable enough to limp, splitting her own rations into containers small enough to pass hand to hand down a boarding tube, putting her ship's hull in front of the convoy's slowest unit, and burning fuel she wouldn't get back to keep that position. By the time whatever was chasing them showed up on long range as a debris signature and a heat bloom, and nothing else readable, the convoy had put 4 hours of distance behind them that they hadn't had before, 2 transports patched well enough to hold pressure, and a Corvette still parked at their flank like it intended to stay there until somebody told it otherwise. Nobody told it otherwise. The dust, whatever it had been, didn't catch them. The Cormorant Reach rode escort for another 19 hours past the point where its own fuel margins stopped making sense, because Okafor said over the command channel, in the only complete sentence of self-justification I ever heard her give for the whole operation, that she'd rather explain a fuel deficit to a board than explain to herself why she'd peeled off early. I logged all of it from Anchor Station, 400 light minutes away, useless to anybody but the record. What I remember clearest isn't the rescue. It's the last exchange between Variel and Okafor, recorded on the same channel that had never once, in the history of either species, been meant to carry a human voice. "Your registry will ask why you diverted a patrol vessel for a signal not addressed to your government," Variel said. "What will you tell them?" "That it was distress, and it was real, and we were the ones who heard it," Okafor said. "Rest is paperwork. We had no claim on you. Didn't need one." There was a silence after that. I've listened to maybe 40 times since, trying to decide what was in it. Not gratitude exactly. Variel wasn't a woman with much gratitude left in her after that crossing. Something closer to the sound of someone recalculating a number she'd thought was fixed. The Outer Concord, whatever it had been to her, had apparently never once answered a beam like that one. A species she'd never heard of, on a frequency she hadn't aimed at them, had. I filed my report the next morning, the way protocol required, flagged as routine, because by then, it wasn't a deviation anymore. It was just what had happened, and the paperwork hadn't caught up to needing a better word for it. Okafor brought the Cormorant Reach home 3 weeks later, running on fumes and goodwill, with a citation pending and a refugee convoy's gratitude logged in a language our translator still hadn't fully indexed. I never met Variel. I've heard the recording of her voice more times than I can count, and the line that stays with me isn't the thanks, because there wasn't much of that. It's the flat, exhausted disbelief in the sentence she said, right before she signed off the channel for good. "You were never on the list," she said. "There was no list that had you on it." "There's one now," Okafor said, and closed the channel. And that was the whole of it. No fanfare, no ceremony, just a Corvette turning for home with its tanks dry and its log full, having answered a call that had never once, in any record anywhere, been meant to reach us.